Here in our last sermon in our series, This Is Us. And as we've been looking at this, we've been watching closely, and really we assembled these values that our church has. So if you walk through the hall, you see them on the side. If you go to the website, you'll see the values on the website. The team worked hard to put these together. These are not new, and they really, though they have unique wording maybe to us, the ideas are not really unique to Trinity. They are really what the church has used throughout all of history. You can call them, we call them values. You can call them disciplines. You can call them virtues. The church has kind of had different names for them throughout time, but it is the rubric. It's the mechanism that the church has used throughout history to build Christians into fully devoted followers of Christ. See, when we come onto this planet and we accept Christ into our heart, we don't instantly disappear and go to heaven, though that might be kind of nice once in a while, right? Like, get me out of here, Jesus, take me home. No, he leaves us here. Why does he leave us here? He leaves us here for a mission, for a purpose, for a reason, and for our formation. And so we've been walking you through the last number of weeks of what those formation pieces have been. And we call them here, though they're unique wording maybe to us, but the ideas are not unique. They are church history, big picture ideas. Biblical teaching was week 1. Week 2, sacrificial worship. 3, generous living. 4, intentional discipleship. 5, outward focus. 6, radical hospitality. And this is the last week, full participation. And here's what we mean by full participation. We believe that we are all members of Christ's body called to full participation in his mission. That we are supposed to participate in making the mission of God happen. And you are called, all of us are called to help make that come to life, the mission of God. My wife and I, we like to read. My wife is in this service. How you doing, honey? It's good to see you. I'm glad you're joining me today. And so when my wife's in the service, I refer to her a lot more. Some of it gets me in trouble. It's all good, though. Having her here, we've been really enjoying reading, and the guys that we've been into lately, guys and girls that we've been into lately, have been like desert fathers, and she's even been reading some really interesting literature just from like nuns, the stuff that they write. So church history, we love church history. It's the seminary days. It's fun to go back and go through that and even explore even more. And she came across this is really great, Teresa of Avila, and she says this: "It is love alone that gives worth to all things." Let that settle in for a moment. It is love alone that gives worth to all things. I believe one of the most important parts about a church, and by church, I do not mean, when I say the words church, I do not mean the chairs or the room or the building. I do not necessarily mean a stage or even this model of doing it necessarily. What I mean by the church really, truly, is the gathering of believers, right? Koinonia, ecclesia. We can go back to these different Greek words that are used to help paint the picture of the church. I mean the gathering of believers. It's the people coming together. And I believe one of the most powerful things about the people of God coming together is, in all honesty, the love that we are able to demonstrate to each other. I want to make the case this morning that your presence, everybody's presence, is incredibly important. I think there is one huge misconception when it comes to the work of God. Huge misconception when it comes to the work of God. And this is especially true in the West in our modern day and age. And I say this, maybe for you this hasn't been a huge misconception. It has been for me, partially because of just the world that I grew up around. I mean, I've spent most of my memorable adult life around universities and seminaries. My parents have been college professors. Dad was, of course, in the ministry. So education was really big in my family. Everybody in my family has at least a master's, if not more. I need to get my doctoral work done if I can keep my last name. I don't know how that works. I'm just kidding. But in this, right, I mean, education has been so big. And so in our home, I think, and my parents get this right, but in our greater groups that I've grown up in, there's one huge misconception when it comes to the work of God. People need experts. We always assume that the most important thing is that people need an expert. You can't make it unless you spend time with an expert. Now, experts are important, and I'm not saying they're bad, and I like them. They're wonderful accountability to wrestling and finding truth. But the truth is, people need presence long before they need perfect advice. And I'm going to make that case this morning. That right, consistent, loving relationships must precede before or come before somebody can really wrestle through deep ideas. The other day, this is just, I don't know, I love it. My oldest is in high school, my youngest is a 2-year-old. So my family is just broad with my children. And the other day I was walking through Target with my 2-year-old. And there was this lady, she starts talking to this lady that was there. She was really sweet. I could tell the lady was a little, 2-year-old doesn't know social boundaries, which is wonderful and awful all at the same time. So in this conversation, I could tell that she was a little bit awkward as my 2-year-old was just asking questions about life and things, stuff that really had nothing to do with even what we were doing. And then my daughter all of a sudden broke the awkwardness. She says, what's your name? And my daughter responds with, I poop. I poop, right? And so it was actually really quite funny. So my daughter, in her response, all of a sudden creates this laughter, and there's a little bit of levity, things get funnier. And as things get funnier, the lady opens up more, and we start having more dialogue. It's really interesting how people can't really engage until they start to feel safe. Let me give you another example. The other night, I woke up in the middle of the night, and I heard some noise out in the hallway outside of our room. And in my mind, if you hear a noise, somebody's, in your house, they tell you should call the police first. But if you have lots of children, 90% chance it's your kids doing something they shouldn't. It's not a burglar. So I get up, I walk out there, and one of my kids was walking back and forth and couldn't sleep. So I asked, what's the problem? Is my daughter. And so my number 3 in the lineup. And my daughter's like, well, I woke up and I read this story in a book, or I read a book, and the story came back to mind, and I just can't sleep. It's stuck in my head. And so I answered in normal dad fashion. I brought tons of reason to the table. I was like, well, listen to me. The story isn't true. So just say feelings. Stop feeling that way. It's not real. Go to bed. And she says, Daddy, that doesn't work. And I'm like, okay, well, fine. And I'm half doing this to be funny with her too. And I'm like, well, fine. Well, then go back to bed. And while you're laying there, just stop thinking about things that make you nervous. And she says, Daddy, that doesn't work. Now, what is the that she is talking about? What is this that? That doesn't work. It doesn't work to not think about those things. Your advice may be really good, but it doesn't work right now. So finally, I actually looked down at her, and I've got my mom, right, the child and adolescent, counselor in my brain. So I looked down at my daughter, and I was like, hey, do you want me to come? I'll lay down in your bed. She loves to snuggle in my back. So I go down, I lay down in her bed, and so I'm laying there. She's got this single-size bed, and I'm a big guy, so it's hard to fit in there, but she snuggles into my back, and she's laying there. She gets really tight, and then you can actually hear her breathing start to calm down as she snuggles into my back. And then she goes, Daddy, you're my Dumbledore. And I was like, you're Dumbledore? And she was like, yeah, when you're around, bad things don't happen. Well, that obviously can't always be true, but in her little brain, she feels really safe with Dad. But then something really interesting happened after she began to relax and feel safe. After that, she goes, I know it's just a story, and I'm going to be okay. You see, she can't wrestle with the idea until her mind is at a place where she's able to do it. How many here have ever read the book Crucial Conversations? Anybody? Got a couple? 2 or 3? It's a really good book if you haven't read it. It was one that was recommended to me by my dad, I think. Mom or dad. I think it was my dad, this one. And the book is all about how to have conversations with people that are going to be intense. So how do you have a conversation if you know the topic is going to cause heightened anxiety or frustration? And what the author does is he makes the objective, scientifically proven case that when your emotions are heightened, you cannot reason as well. You can't. As the blood rushes, and my mom would know this stuff way better than me. Hopefully I'm remembering it right. But as your blood leaves, as you get more anxious and you get more, excited or frustrated or angry, whatever it is, as your emotions go up, the fight or flight begins to engulf. Like literally the blood begins to leave that prefrontal cortex and engage more in the back, and you lose the ability to reason well when your emotions are heightened, when you feel scared, or when you feel nervous, when you feel anxious. No matter how good and perfect the idea is, if you're anxious enough, you can't hear it. You can't. Low likelihood. So what do we do with this? It is very difficult to work through complex ideas until you are in an emotional state of safety. It is very difficult to work through complex ideas until you are in an emotional state of safety. Think about all of our first responders. I love police officers and firefighters. They're amazing people. And over time, the ones that are really good at what they do is they can bring peace to a tense situation. They have the ability to talk people down. When I was a youth pastor, one of my right-hand men that helped me out on all my trips, I took him everywhere I could with me when I was doing youth events. He was a police officer. And man, he could walk into tense high school guys that are angry with each other, and he had this way of just like Papa Bear bringing this calm. He could talk people out of anxious. It was amazing. And then as they came down off of that, he could bring reason to the situation. He was a master at this. I objectively believe, and I'm going to make the case for this the rest of the morning, I objectively believe the greatest gift that you can give to the church is your reliable, caring presence. You being here consistently, saying hi and making connections with people is incredibly important. A Sunday school teacher that loves kids reliably, or adults, a greeter who shakes the hands and remembers the name of a person, a church attender who just commits to be present in a service and comes a little early or maybe stays a little late and runs somebody down and says hi is so incredibly important. You have no idea how powerful your consistent, caring presence really is. Long before, let this settle in deep, long before anybody can wrestle through a complex idea that I give to them, they need to feel like they are safe and cared for and loved. And so your interactions with people, when you invite a friend to come to church, or you choose to sit with somebody new, or you learn a name and build a relationship, you actually pave the way for them to begin to wrestle with deep, complex ideas. Turn to your neighbor and say, "You're really important." You're really important. That's it, right there. That's right. Every level, every stage, you got it. Matthew 16:24-28, I love this, says, "Then Jesus told his disciples, 'If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what shall a man give in return for his soul? For the Son of Man is going to come with his angels in the glory of his Father, and then he will repay each person according to what he has done.'" May God add his blessing to the reading of his word. A couple of things from this I think are really important. One of them, I was going through the actual original language on this earlier in the week. And there's a really unusual idiom in this text. This idea of to deny or revoke or send away. What is he rejecting? What is he putting aside? Take up your cross daily. Deny. I'm going to deny. I'm going to take up my cross, deny myself, take up my cross. What is he talking about in this? It is a radical, so this is Nolan. It's a commentary on the Greek text. It's actually a really good Greek commentary that I have. But it is a radical denial of self-interest and normal concern for one's own well-being for the sake of the family. Here's what he means by this. We often think we superimpose our preconceived ideas onto the text often when we read the Bible. So what we'll do is we have something that we want to be true, and we kind of superimpose it into the text to make it fit. We retrofit our ideas into the Bible. And what we do is we'll read through this, take up his cross daily, deny himself, follow me. What we often put on this is a text talking about me being brave to go after, right, what I think is right and good. It is kind of about you being brave, but it's not you going after what you want. It's about you sacrificing what you want for the greater good. Sacrifice. Lay down. We were talking about this in staff this week in the staff meeting for this campus. And Marcus DePeel, he's awesome. I love Marcus. He is one of our residents. He is leading the college ministry, and he does such a great job, such a good thinker. And Marcus was talking about how this text, he goes like, man, think about all the things Jesus denied himself of. Like he chose to set aside. All right, now remember, the big idea from the beginning. We think it's about the experts. And Jesus over and over again is going to model it's about the relationship. You ready for this? And it's kind of fun too, because when I'm talking with these guys that are still in seminary, it's kind of all still fresh. He's still going through his master's, so it's kind of fresh in his mind. I like that. But he goes, Jesus didn't write this directly. Now we would say that he definitely was a part of inspiring the text, but Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Romans, 1 Samuel, like Paul wrote a huge chunk of this. I could arguably say that Jesus, if he was the one to author the Bible, it would have been way better. No errors, totally perfect, every period in the right spot, every translation. If Jesus really was to be like, no, you know what? No, Matthew out of the way, John, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, right? You need to get Paul, step aside. Paul, you're smart and you're a good dude, but I'm better than you, so let me write all of this. And I want to make sure they get this theology spot on every generation, every age, every person. Now with inspiration, I believe that God does speak through that, but he absolutely uses regular people and lets them participate. He doesn't push them aside, he lets them participate. As we were talking more and more with the staff, we talked about Jesus would have been a better author if he'd have just done it himself. If Jesus would have just done all the baptisms himself, they probably would have been better, but he let his followers do the baptisms. If Jesus really, in all honesty, he had the power and ability to deny all of the pain of the cross and just step off it and be like, you know what, this hurts, and so I'm out of here. But he even sets aside his own strength and ability to be able to help model love. And absolutely the salvation process, faith's not based on works that no man can boast. The only way the Father is through the Son. The sacrifice of Christ on the cross is absolutely our means to salvation. We know this. Jesus was way smarter. He was way stronger. He was a better person on every front. He had never sinned, and yet he allows all of the regular people to participate in the process. Why? He modeled relational love, and he wanted all of his followers to go do the same. Jesus doesn't bypass you. He lets you participate in the process. I have an idea. I think the future of the church is not in the hands of experts. I think the future of the church is in the hands of regular people stepping up and owning it. Let me walk you through this just a little bit more, and I'm going to pull this together. I'm going to invite Josh up. We're going to be done in just a few minutes. I came across this. It was a really interesting research project. I actually found it on bigthink.com, but the project, it was something that they had copied over. They shared it from another spot. But in our modern day and age, I just want you to think about where we are in the state of America today. Even broader than America, but let's look at our context. There is a loneliness epidemic in the U.S., and it's only getting worse. This is the research project. Global health services company Cigna, I believe that's correct, recently teamed up with marketing research firm Ipsos maybe, to investigate loneliness in America. Goes on to say this. They conducted a nationwide survey which found, and this is way up than years previous, that found that 47% of Americans lacked meaningful interpersonal interactions with a friend or a family member on a daily basis. So this is almost half of America they don't even feel like they connect with with a really good friend or even family. Keep going. 43% reported having weak relationships, experiencing feelings of isolation and overall lack of companionship. 46% said they feel lonely often, while 47% reported feeling left out. Now, the greater article explains more of the why behind this. I'm going to sum that up for you. Here's the deal. In America today, and in our modern world, we have become massively involved in superficial friendships. I mean, Facebook started really kind of making this happen. We have thousands of friends that are all superficial, and no real place where we feel like we actually connect in a safe way. And the research goes on to say that if you don't, oh man, you gotta hear this. This is so big. If you don't have places where you feel actually safe and able to wrestle through ideas, you literally cannot think as clear. And so when you have a whole nation of people that are always anxious and always feeling lonely and always feeling left out because most of their relationships are superficial, I mean, Facebook broke the word friend. It went from deep personal safety to superficial connection. And so we see now people that even in universities, they just aren't thinking. They live constantly in a state of anxiety and fear, and the rational ability to wrestle through big ideas is almost gone for some people. I'm not just saying this is my opinion. I'm talking about the research behind these statements. So what does this have to do with us? Even in the last few weeks, in our locations, so we constantly get Next Steps cards, between downtown, the other spot over in, or the Oleo Road location, this location, and all of our services, we constantly get feedback, constantly get cards, emails. Even in the last few weeks, I've heard from a few people that they are curious about God, but hate coming to church. Why? The church should never be a place where people feel alone. And why do they feel bad about coming? It's because they don't like sitting alone, being alone. They're already anxious. They're going through a divorce. Life is really difficult. They feel alone. They feel like they don't connect. They walk into a service and they just are alone. I've met people that have watched sermons online for more than a year, and then they show up here and they feel left out. Listen, I need you. I need you to just be present, to shake a hand, to go out of your way to get to know somebody, to be consistent. Do you know how difficult it is as a pastor when you see somebody come in, you hear their story, and you find out they're alone or frustrated or they're going through a horrible divorce, and it's like a brand new service you're launching, you look around and none of your leaders are present to connect? No wonder they feel so lonely. Even if my ideas that I'm pitching, because it's the Bible, I don't want to do anything more than just proclaim this. Even if it's the Word of God, their ability to wrestle with ideas and think clearly greatly diminishes if they don't feel connected and safe. Listen, the church desperately needs its people to be present and engage. We need you. Turn to your neighbor and say, you are needed.
You are needed.
He's got it. You are needed. You are absolutely needed. Every one of you are absolutely needed. You see, when you learn a name, when you shake a hand, get to know somebody, you massively, massively change their capacity to be able to learn and grow. We need you. The church needs you. Jesus himself built this whole system to include the people of God in the assembly of the church. We wrongly think the most important part of a Sunday service is a deep sermon, or we wrongly think the most important part of a Sunday service is a deep sermon or professional quality music, though I hope some of the sermons are deep, and I think, Josh, you guys, I like what you do. Is that cool? Yeah, you're welcome. We wrongly think that really is the most important. That's a very important part. I'm not diminishing it, but how brilliant a sermon is or how amazing the music is, listen, I really do think the most important, powerful first step for people to grow is in what happens before they walk in this door, what happens after the service, what happens with people. So what does this have to do with, then Jesus said to his disciples, if anyone would come after me, deny himself, take up his cross and follow me. What are the burdens that stand in the way of us meeting together with the family of believers? I really think it hinges on this one primary idea. The enemy has lied to you and convinced you that you're not important, that you're not needed, that your absence doesn't matter. I'm here to tell you, it does. It matters a lot. 90% of the time, when we do our follow-up with people that are new to the church, we're like, man, what was it that made you really feel like you connect? They name greeters. They name Sunday school teachers. They name junior high youth pastors, right? That hang over, or even kids. And then they'll get to the sermon. That's real encouraging. Or the music was good too. We need you. We need you. We wrongly think the most important part of a Sunday service is a deep sermon or professional quality music. It's actually the relationships. It's a faithful Sunday school teacher, smiles, shaking hands. It's a greeter. It's a parking attendant that remembers your name. It's your presence that is most powerful. I got a little video I want to show you. It's just 2 minutes long. It's an interview with one of our residents. She is an amazing worship leader. She's leading this morning, actually helping out this morning. But she's not just talented musically, she is also an incredible athlete, played college soccer all the way through. I just want you to listen to this. Go ahead and play it.
Hi, I'm Alyssa, and I have loved soccer since the age of 9. When I was younger, I loved soccer. I knew that I wanted to go on and play in high school. And so my parents made a deal with me that if I was gonna play club, that I would not play on Sunday mornings. They knew that being in church and loving the community at church was important, and they wanted to instill that in me. And so that was the deal that we came up with so that I could play club. I think as a kid, my sacrifice that I had to make was my pride with being with my team on Sunday mornings. I was an all-time starter on my team, and so it was a big deal to me and to them that I would be there because I made a big impact on our team, but it just became a rhythm that they knew that I wasn't gonna be there on Sunday mornings, and they learned to adapt to that, and we still did well, and they were successful when I wasn't there. Looking back, I'm so grateful that my parents actually did make me miss some Sunday morning soccer games, a lot of Sunday morning soccer games, because it taught me to value what's most important, what's eternally important, and that is having a relationship with my church family, to be in community with you guys, with the body of Christ, worshiping together. And it also gave me a great opportunity to speak into the lives of my teammates. And no, I didn't always feel it as a kid. I wanted to play soccer. I loved soccer, and I still do. But my love for the Lord grew more and more as I was given the opportunity and made sometimes to be present in community. My parents made the hard choice for me to be present at church when I was a kid, and I'm so glad that they did because it shaped my heart over the years to learn to love what it really is eternally valuable, and that is to love Christ above all other things in my life.
The main thing that I hear, and I grew up playing sports all the way through too, the main thing that I hear over and over and over again is we want to model to the world what sacrifice for the team means, loyalty, commitment. When I was a kid, my dad is brilliant. He really is. He's an amazing man. And one of the most emotional memories that I have as a child, my dad came home. He'd been traveling, speaking at different places. And of course, he was teaching at the school and leading in ministry and doing all this stuff. He came home late one night, and my brother, who was pretty young at the time, he probably doesn't even remember it, my brother looked at my dad and said, "How come you have time for everybody else, but you never have time for us?" My dad had been teaching his students, ministry partners, everybody else, that loyalty mattered, but not to your family. And something in my dad changed at that moment, like he shifted. And it wasn't that he gave up all the other stuff, he still kept doing it, but my dad changed to being present with us. That changed everything in my life. It changed everything in my life when my dad started taking me hunting and hanging out with us and going to my games and being involved. It changed everything. Let me just pitch this idea to you. Yes, be committed to your team, but why can't you be committed to your eternal team too? We need you. The team that's not going to end after high school or after college. Even if you go pro, it's not going to be done when you're 25 or 26. Your eternal team needs you too. And 1,000 years, 10,000 years from now, you're going to still be with your eternal team. I'm just saying. We need you to be present, to be engaged, to love, to be the hands and feet of Jesus. We need you. If you would, take your Next Steps card. They're at the back of the chair in front of you. Get your Next Steps cards out. You can get it. Grab it, the Next Steps card, pull it out. Can't just listen to a sermon. I've said this every week, hundreds of times. You got to ask the question, what does this mean for me? What does this mean for me? Maybe one question is, what do you have to lay down to make your faith first priority? Maybe that's one part of it. And by faith, I don't just mean your personal faith, I mean helping other people in their faith too. I mean being there when the new single parent who's struggling and alone shows up and needs help, needs to learn a name, when the new person battling with depression and anxiety feels left out and lonely. We need you to be present and engage with those people. Nobody sits alone. That ought to be like our model. Nobody sits alone. The only way we can accomplish that is if you commit to be here and engage with us too. We need you. On your Next Steps cards, if you would, just any prayer requests that you have, write it down, because we pray over them. Any prayer requests that you have, write it down. If I'm frustrating you this morning, take it to God, pray through it. I'm not here to always be your friend. I want to challenge what you think and why you think it. I still love you a ton. I love you. But if you're inside going, you know what? I can commit to be present. Make sure that I'm here to shake a hand, to engage with people. To the best of my ability. You won't get it right every week. You're going to get sick. I get all that. We have tons. We have a ministry fair out there. Go engage. We need you. Get plugged in. But just on the card, if you're going, man, I'm in, just write on there, I'm in. If you're curious about membership and going to the next level with us to help us really take this to the next level, you're going, I could do it for the next year. I want to be a member. I want to be committed. I want to be in. We have a class called Discover Trinity. Just check it on the box and join us just for a few weeks to see who we are and what we're about and see if you go to the next level and plug in yet again. Any prayer requests you have, anything else, look at the decision card. Is there anything God's putting on your heart? Write it on the decision card, and Josh will walk you through what to do with it next. Go ahead. We just want to thank you so much for joining us online. If God's working in your heart, we would love to hear from you. Go to www.encountertrinity.com and make sure to look up our information and send us a message. We want to know what God's doing in your heart. We want you to know that you are loved by God and absolutely have a purpose.